Welcome to the Give It a Nudge podcast. Thanks for joining us. Each week, you're going to hear stories from founders, VCs, and private equity leaders from across the industry. We hope that these stories are going to give you insights to help you on your journey, and we'd love you to be part of our community. So please hit that subscribe button, and let's get on with the show. Welcome to Give It a Nudge. Today we have got someone who I've known a little while now and has had such a variety of things happen to her in her life, Christie Jenkins, and we're just going to be chatting to her about where she's been, where she is and where she's going. So welcome, Christie.
Thank you so much.
Good to finally have you up from Melbourne and finally in the studio.
It's been a long time coming.
I know it has.
Calendars connect.
I know. When you only messaged me 2 days ago, so that's even better, right?
Yeah.
So for everyone who doesn't know who you are, if there's anyone out there left, why don't you give us a very quick synopsis of let's start out with your sort of sporting career, because that's probably what you're best known for.
Yeah, I don't know that I am actually famous because none of the sports I've played are very well known, but I've played 3 different sports for Australia. Yep. I started my career in trampolining, hold like 12 national titles, was top 10 in the world.
I did not know that.
Yeah. 12
national titles. What age did you start trampolining at?
5.
Yep.
My parents actually met on a trampoline. I am hoping I was not conceived on one.
I was going to ask, but I thought maybe we won't do that.
I'm hoping not. They've never told me for sure. And yeah, they put me in trampoline lessons when I was just a little kid. And I think I came home doing backflips, which probably terrified my poor mum.
Imagine.
And yeah, I went to my first nationals at 8.
Wow.
I won my first nationals at 9 and, did that into my early 20s.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So I did not know that at all. Yeah. I've never watched trampolining, so you're right. I don't know any well, I do now, but I don't know any other ones.
It's like a little more serious than mucking around on the tramp in the backyard.
A little bit more, yeah. I have seen it on TV. All right, and so where did you go to from there, and why did you stop trampolining?
Yeah, it's always a complex thing to retire from a sport that makes up so much of your life and identity. For me, World Championships are only every 2 years in trampolining. I just finished one. And the difference between 10th and 1st is a single step on your landing.
Oh, wow.
So I took the step and did not get a medal in my last World Championships. And I just sort of, at the same time I was finishing uni and starting my career, and the commitment to continue training, usually out in the sticks because you need a 10-metre high ceiling. So it's always in industrial areas, and work in the city and, make that lifestyle work was going to be a very large commitment. And at the same time, I felt like I've actually done almost everything I want to do in this sport. And I still want to be an athlete, but I'm ready for a new challenge.
And you did that while you were studying?
Yeah.
So what were you studying?
I have a double degree in economics and Chinese.
Oh, really? I knew you had economics. I don't know why I didn't know Chinese. Can you speak Mandarin?
No, please don't.
I don't know any, so there's no danger of testing
I got decently good at uni, but as all things, if you don't practice. Yeah.
Okay, so you finish, and it's a logical time to make a change anyway when you finish uni, right? It's a big change in your life.
Yes. So I still wanted to be an athlete. Like, I loved that part of it. Yep. And my whole family had played beach volleyball while I was doing trampolining. So my mum and dad played for 20 years.
Maybe that's where you were conceived.
Maybe. Thank you for that lovely image. Sand everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got blonde hair. I don't
know. So they had played, for 20 years while I was growing up, and my brother had played at a junior national level, and I had been going to trampolining. So I was the black sheep of the family. Yep. And I actually was quite systematic in the decision. I made a list I was 23, so I was like, okay, it's going to take you a decade to get good at another sport. I'll be 33 then. What sports can you still play in your 30s at a pro level?
Yep.
And I made a list. Beach volleyball obviously on the list. A lot of the Olympians are in their late 30s.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
I thought they were younger.
They can be, but the last Olympians that won the women's gold medal were 40.
There you go.
So martial arts, rowing, a few other things. And because I had the connections in volleyball through my family, I was like, I'll give this 6 months. I'll just start from nothing and start training 8 to 10 times a week and see how I go. And within a couple of months, a really good player asked me to be her partner, and that was it. Just
hooked
to the races.
Hooked and off.
Yeah. So.
And then you took that really far.
Yeah, I've only just retired last year, 6 months ago. And, I played for Australia on the world tour around the world, I've won national title events across Australia.
Yep.
So it's been an incredible career and an amazing lifestyle too, right?
Oh,
Go to the
awesome
beach every day, and that's your job.
How good is that?
Yeah.
And then you did the CrossFit at the same time then, because
Yes, almost an accidental sport. If one can play a pro sport accidentally.
Yep.
But yeah, I wanted to stay fit for volleyball, and unlike, you know, a gymnastics type sport where your conditioning and strength is part of your training, in volleyball that's not the case.
Yep.
So you have to do something for gym, and going to a regular gym was too boring. A friend dragged me along to a CrossFit class. I did this crazy workout and couldn't straighten my arms for 3 days. They were so sore. And I was like, that is the thing for me. That will make me fit.
it's full on, isn't it?
Yeah. And I ended up joining this very elite gym, CrossFit Athletic, here in Sydney, actually.
Yep.
I was living here. And, you know, they were like, you're pretty strong, Christie. Do you want to be part of the team? And I was like, oh, I mean, that sounds fun. Like, sure, why not? And I didn't quite realise what I was committing myself to, which was 11 training sessions a week, 2 to 3 hours a session.
Oh, wow, that's a lot. 20, 30 hours training on top of your full-time career.
Yeah, and I was working full-time and I was playing volleyball.
working full-time.
Yeah,
Oh
so
God.
it was like sayonara to my social life for a while. Yeah.
Everything. Just basically, if you weren't doing one of those three things, you were sleeping, I assume,
Yeah.
or eating, one or the other.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
And then, and so you did that to competition level, and then do you still do it now, or you?
So yeah, we ended up winning the Asia Pacific region,
Yep.
so all of Australia and Asia, and then we went and competed in the World CrossFit Championships, placed 11th. I competed as an individual the following year,
Yep.
and after that, I just had to make the call between you're playing two sports at a pro level.
Yep.
It's unsustainable, and made the call to stick with
Volleyball.
volleyball. But I've recently gone back to just regular CrossFit classes,
Yeah.
not the competitive side.
It's very much. I did a few classes years ago. It's very technique driven, isn't it? Very, very technique driven around some of the.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's the huge fitness of it, but the way they do their pull-ups, the way they do it, there's a very specific style to it, right?
But that is what makes it rewarding, because you are improving not just your fitness, so you can feel like you're improving, I'm getting fitter or stronger, but you
Yep.
can also feel like you're improving, like I learnt that new skill or that new technique.
Yeah.
So it's very rewarding.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you said you were working full time during all of this. What were you doing?
I mean, I'd spent a decade or so in management consulting.
Yep.
Initially for the in-house strategy teams for like ANZ and CBA, a little bit of Bupa. And then to support my sporting career, I basically went freelance. So I
Okay.
did a whole bunch of freelance strategy and consulting work. And I was spending 6 months a year in Australia working and training, and 6 months a year living overseas and playing and competing in beach volleyball.
Sounds like a pretty nice life.
I know, right?
And so you retired last year.
Yep.
And where did you go from there?
On the sporting front or the career front?
Retiring, and we've had a few sporting people on here, and I know a few. When you retire from full time, it's a massive change, right? It's a change in your
Yeah.
lifestyle. It's a change in your identity, I guess, to some degree. You talked about that earlier with the trampolining.
Yeah.
You know, you've got this identity of how long have you done beach volleyball? A decade or so, right?
12 years.
12 years. So 12 years of doing something at such a high level and intensity, to suddenly stop doing that, it's kind of like, what am I now? I guess is what you see a lot of
Yeah.
athletes go through. Some make that transition easier than others. How did you find that transition? And I mean, I guess you were doing management consulting as well, but how did you find that? Because it's suddenly got so much
No,
time.
it's already, I'd already like left consulting and had moved into venture capital.
Right.
But to speak to the mental challenges of retiring, it was not easy.
Yeah.
You know, and across a number of ways. So like in mastery, you know, you have always been good at something in your life,
Yeah.
and suddenly you're not good at anything. And then you look around and you're like, okay, I'm going to look at my professional career, and everybody else has a head start on you.
Because
You
you've been
feel
too
like-
busy.
Yeah, you've been traveling the world playing
Yeah.
sport, right? And it's not very rational, but you feel like you're coming last nonetheless.
Because you've got that competitiveness
Yeah.
ingrained in your
Yeah.
DNA almost.
So that's a part of it. The identity piece is 100% a part of it. Even the question like, what do you do? I was just like, for 30 years, I've said, I'm an athlete. And that is shorthand for saying, you know, I have discipline to train every day. I am ambitious. I have these goals. I'm good at something. You know, you're competitive. And suddenly you're like, well, I don't know who I am anymore. And that's been a challenge. This sense of there are so many emotional highs and lows in sport, like really, really extreme highs. You know, you can stand there on the baseline of the beach volleyball court with the ball ready to serve on like the final point of a championship match, and the whole stadium is like clapping and like cheering you on, and like the pressure of that one moment, and then like making the serve and winning the game, and you know, the high from that, or like standing on the podium when they play the national anthem for you. Like, where will you get that elsewhere in your life?
It's tough.
Yeah. And I think I worry that I have hardwired my brain to crave those feelings, and that I won't find it elsewhere in life. So.
Well, I think every athlete probably finds that, you know, whether you're a physical athlete, whether you're a motorsport racer, you know, whatever it is, or you suddenly, and you have a lot of time on your hands to think about these things as well. I think that's that sort of culminates on the problem, right? Because you're not training as much as you were, because you don't need to. I'm assuming you still train, because, well, athletes always do. But I guess in terms of, most of them, people seem to make that transition. And they find a way to make that transition, and then they find something that is different. I think it's probably just a rewiring of your brain, which is what you would have had to have done to create the discipline that you would have had, because it's not natural to get up at 4 a.m. and go training every day for most human beings, right? You have to train yourself to be able to do that. So now you just got to train yourself. I guess you've got to look at it that way, to do something else.
And I think we also just don't talk about it very much, right?
Probably so.
You know, people are like, congrats, you had an amazing career, but you know, it's not so straightforward when you look back at your career like that, because no matter when we retire, there was a goal we had in front of us that remains unmet. And you, in some ways, are like, oh, I failed to get the thing I really wanted. And even if you won the Olympic gold, you're like, yeah, but that person won 4, and like I had more.
There's always someone.
There's always something left on the table, and
that's the same in business, I think.
Yes, I agree. And one of the things I did was go and speak to a whole bunch of other athletes, and also founders, because founders have a very similar mentality to athletes, right? You're chasing this extremely improbable goal with very, very low odds of success.
You can see it, right? You can see it.
Yeah, you know, and you're going to commit decades of your life to it. So. Founders said exactly the same thing, but one of the challenges was this narrative is not really in the public space, and so those one-on-one conversations were almost like therapy for me, and were very helpful.
They're probably good for the founder. I've seen founders sell their businesses and just completely fall apart. And I know when I've sold 2 businesses, and I've had periods of time off. And it's almost mourning. You have a sense of loss because you invest so much time and energy in something, and then it's not there anymore. It's a very bizarre feeling. But after that long and competing in that many different sports at that level, I would imagine, that is difficult. So where are you now? So you're involved with Athletic Ventures now. I don't know massive amounts about them. I've seen them. I've read things about them. But tell me a little bit about where that came from, how you ended up involved with them. Obviously, there's a pretty good idea, but tell us a little bit about it.
So founded by Matt DeBoer, who played for Greater Western Sydney in the AFL. And I got involved like pretty early on, in the first few months. And because I saw an article in the AFR, and I was just like, oh my God, it's sport plus venture capital. Like, this is my dream meeting of ideas here. And, through a connection, through a mentor, through another connection, I eventually got an intro to Matt. And I was like, Matt, I want to help. He's like, well, we've just started. Like, this is not a job. I was like, doesn't matter. And, that was 2.5 years ago now, still involved. And Athletic Ventures has grown to become a syndicate of 150 professional Australian athletes. Now.
Wow.
Yes.
So it's just Australian?
Mostly Australian athletes. Many of them are living and training and playing overseas. And it's a syndicate, so we invest deal by deal.
So like an angel group.
Exactly. But, if you think about the value that having those athletes on your cap table could bring.
Enormous,
right? Like
profiles.
Exactly, the profiles. And we've even, helped a lot on things like team culture and like leadership and bringing those mindset lessons from sport into startups as well.
And so, you, as you said, you've been involved with venture capital for a while. You're in venture capital now. I guess, what do you feel outside of your management sort of consulting and strategy training that you had? and your Mandarin skills. What do you think you've brought into that venture capital? Venture capital to me is a little bit of a dark art. I don't understand the whole analysis part. We've talked about this before. I'm a people individual. I judge people like that. But what do you think an athlete brings? Because you've got a lot of transferable skills, a huge amount.
Yeah, I think what has been the most fascinating for me is investing in VC is really about the founder first.
Yep.
And the very best founders have an almost identical mindset to the very best athletes. And that's part of why I love it so much.
Yep.
And that has been a strength for me in terms of like assessing founders, but also a strength in terms of then helping founders develop that mindset. I have some investors think, okay, that company or that founder either has it or they don't.
Yep.
And I bring a much more growth mindset around it. I'm like, of course you can learn the skill set of being a founder, but actually, of course, you can learn the mindset of being a founder as well. You see athletes develop resilience over time after they lose a bunch.
Yep. A lot of resilience.
Yeah. So, I mean, absolutely a founder can develop the mindset too. And so bringing that from elite sport and bringing that to startups has been, one of the cruxes of my career to date.
Yeah. And so where else have you worked from VC point of view? I know where you are now, but where else? Because you said you were involved in VC before. Was that from an investor point, like an LP point of view, or was that from talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah. So I work at Blackbird Ventures as well.
Yeah.
And I hope to have a very, very long career in venture, and the next plan is probably to go over to the US.
Yep.
And if you want to be the best in the world at something, you should surround yourself with the best in the world. And
very true.
That's really the birthplace of venture.
Are you going to California?
Oh, it's very tempting.
You're a beach volleyball player. How could you go anywhere else?
It's so tempting, right? And I hate winter.
Me too. And winter's coming, right? Yeah. What are we? April, May?
Oh, I know. And I went 7 years playing beach volleyball where I didn't have a winter because I just did summer in Australia, summer in the US. So I am a complete wimp when it comes to cold weather now.
And you would have lived in California before, I assume.
The whole
time.
I was living in Hermosa Beach in LA.
There.
Yeah, so it's very tempting. But everything's on the table for the US.
Texas, I don't know if Texas is quite, I don't know, it's warm.
Yeah, I've heard good things about Austin.
Yes, Austin's supposed to be super cool.
Yeah.
But don't go to New York. It's so cold.
Yeah, sorry, New York. Great city in summer.
You can go visit. Yeah.
I love investing, and you get to just work. The teams of people that work in VC funds are just so elite at what they do and who they are, and they're all A+ players. And then you get to work with these really elite founders in the portfolio, and I feel like I'm in a sports team in some ways because everybody is just so driven and so committed and just wanting to make this huge impact on the world.
I think startups are like a sports team, particularly early, because there isn't really a defined role. You've got to work, as everyone's just got to do. You've got to make up for where your other players or team members don't have the strengths, right? That's the whole point, all against the world, which is kind of what you do in sport. So I guess it would be quite similar in that respect.
Yeah.
So in terms of investments, you've obviously invested in venture through venture capital firms. Have you done your own investments as well? Obviously you've got Athletic Ventures, but have you done any angel investing and that sort of stuff?
I've done a little bit through Athletic Ventures. I have worked at Blackbird. I've invested in the Blackbird Fund. I believe a lot in that fund.
Yeah.
But I am not an AFL superstar. I'm not an NBA superstar, and I don't get paid to play sport. So I get caught up in the sophisticated investor rules, and that just, stops a lot of very experienced, very knowledgeable, very passionate people in Australia from angel investing.
Yeah, I don't know. There's some funny rules around that. You don't have that in the US, do you? I don't think there's anything.
There are
it's much simplified.
Rules. Yeah. Oh, they still have some rules around it.
Do they?
Yeah.
Okay. And so the US, when are we thinking of doing this? What's the plan? And I guess have you got you've obviously got a network of people there from your sporting, but do you have a network in VC? Do you have a network in investing and start? I mean, it's obviously massive.
Yeah, there, right? I have built the most incredible network in Australia, and I love this ecosystem and how helpful everyone is to each other.
It's very collaborative. It's like, that's what I like about it. I've only been in it properly for 4 years or so, and I'm the same. I find it so rewarding because everyone's so generous with everything, time, effort, knowledge, the whole lot. It's a very enjoyable environment to be in.
And it can, when you're on the outside looking in, it can feel like a black box. I was like, what is a startup, 3-4 years ago? And once you're in the inside, the warmth and the welcomingness is incredible. So I'm using that network, and many of those people in that network are well connected in the US, and I've had just the most lovely offers of support and intro, and a very, very long list of people to catch up with.
That's cool. I mean, we were at South Start together a few weeks back, right? I've not been to that event before. That was quite different to all the other events before. What did you think? Because it was like a festival, right? And it was 4 days. It was almost, I don't know, it felt a bit like a holiday club kind of thing. I don't know. It felt very, some of the other events.
Is that just because it was at a winery? Or?
Maybe, I don't know. But I mean, you look at Sunrise, right? Sunrise, obviously it's a Blackbird event. That's very well run, but it's very clinical. Like it's very boom, 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 and you can get the maximum out of it if you plan your day. This was far more sort of breezy, and everyone was just cruising around. And I found the 4-day thing really good because I got to see the same people 4 or 5 times. So you got a much deeper connection than meeting someone for 20 minutes, for example.
Yeah, it's a good point. I would probably characterise South Start as being more about the participants colliding with each other, and
colliding.
Sunrise,
that's the right word.
Yeah, Sunrise more about the speakers and the content, and Sunrise. I loved it, but it was just a blur because it was.
I was exhausted.
You'd like run into someone, you're like, oh, I've got to go to this, and I'll see you the next thing, and.
I was completely spent at the end of those 2 days after Sunrise. I just had nothing left in me. I was just so tired.
But it was like a happy glow.
It was like, it's almost like finishing a long run. I was just like, just kind of got a funny high, but I just want to go to sleep.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, we've got South by Southwest coming. Will you be here for that? Or you should come back.
Yeah, well, I'll be there.
So it's a week in Sydney, right? It's a whole week of Sydney.
I'm committing now. I will be there.
Okay, because that's going to be fun, I think, because it's the first time it's ever been here.
It's huge.
I know, it is huge. There you are, there's Texas coming to Sydney.
Exactly.
It's a frightening thing. All right, so long term, you're still transitioning, I can tell by the way you're talking. What goals do you have now in terms of what you want to do? Not necessarily by going to the US, I wouldn't be that specific, but just generally, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
I know you've got goals.
I do. I'm so many. The best thing to come out of my career at Blackbird has been they were generalist funds, so I got to do everything.
Yep.
And now I know what I like.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah. So, I love investing in, consumer, human performance, health, sport, AI.
And not a lot of people do like investing in consumer.
Not a lot of people like those categories.
Or anything that involves any kind of hardware, right? Because of the costs, the capital intensity. So if it's anyone who's heard that, they should be excited, right? Because
come and hit me up.
Come and talk to Christie.
And, whereas I know that deep tech, Web3, enterprise software is not really my jam. And I also prefer earlier stage to late stage.
Yep, me too.
So I know that now. And so that is the focus on the investing front. On the other front, I've had the opportunity over the last couple of years to do so much at this intersection of sport and startups.
Yep.
Obviously Athletic Ventures is one, helping launch the Athlete Fellowship that StartMate's running.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, so we've taken 50 athletes and helping them break into startups, whether as a founder, an operator, or an investor.
That's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
So that's done with StartMate, is it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I've not heard about that.
Yeah. So, I'm so psyched because
I can see
campaigning for that for a long time. And I speak so much and I write so much and I, coach and mentor so much in this space of athlete mindset.
Yep. I get your newsletter.
Thank you.
I do read it.
Yes.
You know this. I subscribe.
I do,
I told you, yes. And I saw you speak at South Start as well. Where you talk. Yeah.
So, I'm continuing on in that vein, and I'm excited about the US in particular because sport is such a central part of their commercial culture, not just their national identity as it is here in Australia, but college sport is
so
huge
big.
machine,
so
right?
big.
Professional sport is this massive commercial entity, and you're seeing funds in the US that are starting to invest in women's sports teams. How cool is that?
Yeah.
You're seeing individual athletes like Serena Williams start to have her own fund.
Saw that. Yeah.
So I'm really pumped to continue that vein as well.
I can see why you'd want to go there. I mean, I think college sport's probably bigger than Australian sport. I mean, really, without question.
100%. Yeah.
But I think you talk about consumer, when you talk about IoT, the market is so much bigger there. The problem with Australia is it's such a small consumer base. There's a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier, and there's a lot more interest in investing in that stuff. So you're going to get exposed to a lot more, and they take sport far more seriously. I think, particularly around the data and analysis and measuring, and I've seen some really fast. There's a lot happening in IoT for sport, like crazy stuff. It's going to be super cool.
Yeah, and even like computer vision will be game changing for sport, right? Because then you don't need the hardware necessarily.
Yeah.
VR is out of fashion, but like as an athlete, I was like, that would have been the best training tool ever. You can experience going to the Olympics before you're there. You can play a team before you've actually played them using VR. You can do 1,000 reps without tiring out your body using VR. So I'm kind of bullish on that.
It's that 10,000 hours thing, right? It's a lot easier to do it if you can do like another 8 hours a day at home without having to go somewhere or whatever. It's convenience and when you're traveling and all that kind of stuff. Right? It gives you that exposure to that environment.
And they've changed the regulation in the US around the name, image, and likeness for college athletes, which allows individuals to start commercializing their own brand and identity. And
really,
the intersection of sport and media is becoming super interesting there.
It makes a lot of sense for you to go there. Okay, so lessons learned. What do you reckon? And let's talk about and I know you're still going through it, the transition. What do you think? You said yourself, people don't talk about it enough. What do you think, if there's people out there that's going through the same thing or coming up to, and it could be even someone leaving the forces or so, it's a similar sort of thing, right? When they're going from one transition to another. What do you think you learned the most, that surprised you the most during that period that you've gone through so far? Because there's always things that you kind of know you're going to have to go through, but then there's always something you go, I just never saw that coming. That's a tough question, particularly as I didn't warn you I was ever going to ask it, because I only just thought of it, to be honest. But,
Which transition are we talking about? Like
from sport to, from professional sport to non-professional athlete, I guess.
Cool. I think what surprised me the most,
This is kind of therapy too.
It is therapy. I mentally prepared for some things. I knew identity was going to be hard.
Yeah.
But there were other things that came up that were a surprise. Like, for instance, am I still friends with the people that I used to train and play with?
Oh, good question.
Right? Because suddenly you don't have the structure that means you spend time together all the time, and you have to outbound reach out to those people.
Yeah.
And then you don't have anything in common anymore. Are you still friends?
We've got history, that's it, right? That's a really interesting, I would never have thought of that.
Yeah.
That caught you off guard.
Absolutely.
And I would imagine that it's different on case-by-case basis, like it is with any other human interaction that you have.
Yeah.
Right? There isn't a right or wrong answer to that. But there's probably people who you might have even become closer to, and other people you've never spoken to since, right?
So that, when I was making the decision, I found it so hard to talk to my family. Like, I'm sorry, Mum, but she was the last to know. And
why do you think that is? Because there's just the lack of ability to understand.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, beach volleyball in particular is closely tied to family. My mum and dad played.
We talked about that.
My brother played. I played my first ever tournament with my mum. She was way better than me at that time. I think I'm a little better now. My dad passed away, and it was the volleyball community that really rallied around our family. And so because it was so tight-knit with family, I didn't feel like they could give me an unbiased perspective.
Yeah, okay.
Whatever advice they gave me, they were too close to it for it to be objective. And so I ended up speaking to just people that were 3 degrees removed first to test the idea of retirement.
That's quite common though. People try really personal, I've done this myself, really personal things you chat with almost strangers about because it's easier.
Yeah, but it feels like you're betraying
the
people close to you. So yeah, that was challenging as well.
Yeah, and I think the people close to you don't understand why you do that, and they get quite, if they find out, they feel quite hurt.
I mean, I would be hurt if someone didn't speak to me.
Even though you know why, right?
I know why, but I would still be hurt, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's really interesting. Good lessons, I like that. Well, when you have gone over to the US and achieved whatever it is that we're going to find out you're going to achieve, we will get you back on the show. Maybe we'll be filming in the US by then. Who knows?
I have no doubt.
It's great to have you on, finally.
You. Yeah.
And it's a super interesting story. I think you've had, we're trying to get the show really different people's perspectives, really different experiences. Yours is a very unique experience in what you've gone through. So I think it'll be an awesome episode for everyone who's just watched it.
Thank you. Yes.
Thanks for coming on, and we will see you all next time.